I always thought my life was pretty ordinary, but in a good way. 8 years married to a woman I genuinely loved, a decent home, steady jobs, and no real drama. That was life for me and Lauren. She was always thoughtful, the kind of wife who'd wake up early to pack my lunch or randomly send a sweet, "I miss you" text in the middle of a busy workday. Honestly, I considered myself one of the lucky ones. But that all changed a few weeks ago when Lauren dropped a bomb I never saw coming. It was an ordinary Wednesday evening. We were having dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti, like we usually did on a weeknight. We were talking about work, the weather, just everyday stuff. And then, as casually as if she were asking me to pass the salt, Lauren said, "Have you ever thought about opening up our marriage?" I nearly choked on my food. I stared at her, trying to process what she just said. Was she serious? But her face was calm, too calm. No nervous twitch, no awkward laugh. She really meant it. "What?" I finally managed to blurt out, as if I hadn't heard her right. "You know, like other couples do sometimes," she continued, her voice soft but steady. "They stay together, but they also see other people." My stomach turned. This was my wife of 8 years, my Lauren, talking about sharing our marriage with other people like it was just another option on the table. Everything I thought I knew about us felt like it was crashing down all at once. For a few seconds, I was completely lost for words. My brain was working overtime, trying to make sense of what she was saying. This was the same woman who couldn't even lie about birthday surprises without giving herself away. And now, she's suggesting this? I pushed my plate aside. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended, trying to keep the tremor out of it. Lauren nodded, her eyes focused on her half-eaten pasta. "It's just something I've been thinking about. You don't have to decide anything right now. I just wanted to bring it up." I sat there, staring at her, trying to grasp what had just happened. This wasn't a random thought that just popped into her head. She had been thinking about this, probably for a while. "What made you start thinking about this, Lauren?" My voice came out steadier than I expected, but my heart was pounding in my chest. She hesitated for a moment, her fork spinning a single strand of spaghetti as if that would keep her grounded. "It's just, some of my friends have been talking about it. You know, Jenny and Allison. And it got me wondering if it could work for us, too. We've been together a long time, Noah. Maybe it could keep things exciting." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Exciting? Was she bored? Was she tired of us? We had been through so much together. I thought we were solid, unbreakable. But now, the way she was talking, it felt like we were standing on opposite sides of a canyon, and she was ready to leap into something I wasn't prepared for. The room felt cold, like the air had thickened around us. I tried to swallow the bitterness rising in my throat. "Are you unhappy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid of her answer. "Is there something I'm missing here?" She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and, was that hope? "No, I'm not unhappy, Noah. I love you. I really do. This isn't about that. I just think, maybe it's something new. Something different." Different. That word stung. The way she said it, so casually, made it feel like she was already halfway out the door, even though she was sitting right in front of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask, why? What changed? But all I could do was sit there, nodding, pretending like I could actually process this conversation, because deep down, a darker thought was creeping in. What if she was already seeing someone else? That night, I lay awake in bed, listening to her soft breathing beside me. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Could she really want this just for something different? Or was there someone else in the picture already? I hated thinking like that. I hated doubting her. But the idea wouldn't leave me alone. The next morning, things between us were normal. Too normal. Lauren acted like nothing had changed. She made breakfast, kissed me goodbye before work, and even sent me a quick text later in the day. "Hope you're having a good day. Love you." But it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And the worst part? I didn't know if I was being paranoid or if my gut was trying to tell me something I didn't want to hear. As the days went by, I started noticing little things. Her phone was always with her, more than before. She'd get texts late at night, quick glances, followed by a dismissive, "Oh, just Jenny." I told myself not to read too much into it, but every time her phone chimed, that gnawing doubt inside me grew. Was I losing my mind? Or was Lauren already stepping into this open marriage idea, whether I was ready or not? The more I tried to act normal, the more that feeling of dread gnawed at me. Every time her phone buzzed, I found myself tensing up, waiting to hear her say, "It's just Jenny," again. Except now, I wasn't sure I believed her. I hated feeling this way, like I was becoming one of those paranoid, jealous husbands, but I couldn't help it. One night, after Lauren had fallen asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Could it really be that simple? Could she really just be curious, testing the waters? Or was there something more? Something I wasn't seeing? My eyes drifted to her phone on the nightstand. I knew it was wrong, but that little voice in the back of my head kept pushing. Just check. See if she's really talking to Jenny. Maybe you're overthinking this. I resisted for a while, but after what felt like hours of lying there, I couldn't take it anymore. I carefully slid out of bed, making sure not to wake her, and tiptoed to the living room. I grabbed my laptop off the coffee table, feeling guilty as hell. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but I needed answers. Something that would tell me if I was losing it, or if there really was more going on than she was letting on. I started digging. First, I checked her social media accounts, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, I saw it. Her browser history showed she had been visiting forums about open relationships for weeks. She had even posted questions under some anonymous username. I kept scrolling, feeling sicker with every click. This wasn't just some passing thought she'd mentioned over dinner. She had been thinking about this for a long time. And it wasn't just hypothetical curiosity. She had been looking for advice on how to convince a hesitant partner to try an open marriage. How to bring it up without making it sound like she was already involved with someone. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear anything else. I stood there, staring at the screen, my mind racing in 1,000 directions. Was she already seeing someone? Was this guy someone I knew, or a total stranger? The thought made me feel like I was about to be sick. Lauren had always been so open, so honest, or at least, I thought she had been. But now, everything felt like a lie. The next day, I tried to act normal. I tried to pretend I wasn't spiraling inside. But the tension between us kept growing. Every time she smiled at me or asked about my day, I found myself wondering if she was just putting on a show, hiding something bigger. Later that week, Lauren told me she was going out with Jenny and Allison for a girls' night. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But now, the idea of her going out without me made my stomach turn. "Where are you guys going?" I asked, keeping my tone casual, hoping to mask my suspicion. "Oh, just downtown. Probably grab some drinks, maybe check out that new bar by the pier," she said, not really looking at me as she finished putting on her makeup. I watched her closely, every detail. She looked good, too good for a casual night out with friends. She was wearing the dress I loved, the one that made me stop and stare every time she wore it. "Need me to pick you up later?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. She shook her head, laughing softly. "No, we'll Uber back. Don't worry, babe." She leaned in and kissed me, but it felt different, like it wasn't meant for me. I watched her leave, the nagging doubt growing stronger with every step she took out the door. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my keys. I had to know where she was really going. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight wasn't just another night out with her friends. I followed her. I followed Lauren's car at a distance, my heart racing the entire time. It felt like something out of a bad movie, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know if my gut was right. As we drove through the city, I kept hoping she would head toward Jenny's place or some familiar bar, just so I could breathe again and tell myself I was wrong. But she didn't. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place we used to go to for date nights. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just some random bar with her friends. I parked a few spots away, watching as she stepped out of the car. She took a quick glance around, like she was checking to see if anyone was watching, then walked toward the entrance. I stayed in the car for a few minutes, trying to convince myself that I was reading too much into it. Maybe she was meeting Ginny and Allison there. Maybe they had changed plans. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. After a few minutes of sitting in my car, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out and headed inside, keeping my head low as I scanned the dimly lit dining room. And then I saw her. She wasn't with Ginny or Allison. She was with him. There was a man sitting across from her in a booth near the back. He was tall, clean-cut, and dressed in a sharp button-down shirt. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it didn't matter. The way they were leaning in toward each other, the way she smiled at him, lightly brushing her hand against his on the table. It was like she was someone else, someone I didn't even recognize. My chest tightened. My worst fear was unfolding right in front of me. This wasn't about spicing things up or keeping things exciting like she'd said. Lauren was already living the open marriage she'd suggested, and she hadn't even bothered to ask if I was ready for it. I quickly backed out of the restaurant before she could see me. My head was spinning, my heart racing. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Everything was a blur as I stumbled back to my car, my mind trying to process what I had just seen. She had been lying to me. All this time, while I had been agonizing over the idea of an open marriage, she was already involved with someone else. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension. I had trusted her. 8 years of marriage, and she had thrown it all away for some guy. I didn't know how long this had been going on, but at that moment, it didn't even matter. The trust was shattered. When I got home, I couldn't sit still. My mind was racing, replaying the scene over and over again. I kept seeing her smile at him, the way she used to smile at me. How long had this been happening behind my back? How many nights had she gone out with friends only to meet him instead? Hours passed, and I still couldn't calm down. I knew she'd be home soon, and when she walked through that door, everything would come crashing down. There was no turning back now. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't act like nothing had changed. It was after midnight when I heard her car pull into the driveway. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched the headlights sweep across the living room. I stood there, waiting, feeling the anger boil up inside me. The door creaked open, and there she was, looking tired but satisfied, like she had just come back from a fun night out. "Hey," she said softly, kicking off her shoes by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. We stayed out longer than I thought." I didn't say anything, just stared at her. She paused, sensing something was off. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly as she dropped her purse on the couch. "You weren't with Jenny tonight," I said flatly, my voice low but sharp. Lauren froze, her hand halfway to her purse. She glanced up at me, her eyes widening just a bit. "What are you talking about?" "I followed you," I said, my voice growing colder. "I saw you. At the restaurant. With him." For a moment, she just stood there, speechless, like a deer caught in headlights. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The color drained from her face, and that's when I knew. She had been caught, and there was no denying it now. "Noah, it's not what you think," she finally said, taking a hesitant step toward me. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the silence of the room. "Not what I think. You were sitting across from another man, Lauren. You've been lying to me for weeks, maybe even months. How exactly is that not what I think?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "Please, just let me explain," she begged, her voice breaking. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I spat the word back at her, barely able to keep the anger from spilling over. "No, Lauren, it is not complicated. It's pretty damn simple. You lied. You cheated. You've been sneaking around with another man, and now you want to act like it's all just a misunderstanding?" Tears streamed down her face as she tried to close the distance between us again, but I stood my ground. She was crying, pleading, but all I could think about was how she had smiled at him, how she had touched his hand like it meant something, like he meant something. "I did not mean for it to happen like this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was going to tell you, Noah. I swear. I didn't know how." "Tell me what?" I snapped. "That you've been seeing him behind my back for weeks? Months? That you were using this whole open marriage thing to cover up what you were already doing?" Were you going to just ease me into the idea so you could keep cheating without feeling guilty? Her face twisted in pain, and she wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. No, it wasn't like that. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was confused, Noah. I thought maybe if we tried something different, it would fix us. Fix us? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You thought screwing around with some guy was going to fix us? How the hell does that make any sense? Lauren collapsed onto the couch, her shoulders shaking with sobs. For a second, I just stood there, watching her. I wanted to feel something, anger, sadness, maybe even pity, but all I felt was cold, numb, like the part of me that had loved her was already shutting down. I love you, she choked out between sobs. I was stupid. I made a mistake. But I love you. I never stopped loving you. Love? I shook my head in disbelief. You don't do this to someone you love, Lauren. You don't lie to them, cheat on them, and then try to pretend everything's fine. That's not love. Her sobs grew louder, and for a moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she had looked at him, how her hand had brushed his. She had broken something between us that could never be fixed, no matter how many tears she shed. I thought about giving you another chance, I said, my voice low and cold. I really did. But then I realized something. I can't live like this. I can't look at you and not see what you did. Even if we went to therapy, even if we tried to work through it, I would never trust you again. That's gone, Lauren. It's over. She looked up at me, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen. Noah, please, she begged. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on us. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could fix it, that the years we spent together meant something. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was the betrayal, the lies, the man sitting across from her at that restaurant. I'm done, I said quietly. I want a divorce. Her reaction was instant. She gasped like I had just punched her in the stomach, and her body sagged against the couch. No, Noah, don't say that. We can work through this. I know I messed up, but I love you. Please, let's just talk to someone. We can fix this. I shook my head slowly, the finality of my words sinking in. There's nothing to fix. You broke it, Lauren. You broke us. And I can't keep pretending like we can just go back to the way things were. It's done. Her sobs grew louder, her hands trembling as she clutched at her robe, trying to hold herself together. But I was already gone, emotionally disconnected from the woman I had once shared everything with. I'll move out tomorrow, I said, my voice flat. You can keep the house. I don't want anything from you. Lauren's eyes widened, and she jumped up from the couch, grabbing my arm in a desperate plea. No, please. You don't have to leave. We can start over. I will do whatever it takes. I gently pulled my arm free from her grasp. I already talked to a lawyer. The papers will be ready soon. Her face crumpled as she fell back onto the couch, her sobs echoing through the room. I had never seen her so broken before, but I couldn't let it affect me. Not anymore. As I walked out of the room, leaving her crying on the couch, I felt a strange sense of relief. The decision had been made. There was no going back now. The next morning, I packed my bags. It felt surreal, gathering up the pieces of my life and preparing to walk away from everything I had known for the past 8 years. Lauren stayed in the bedroom most of the time, avoiding me as I moved from room to room, grabbing what little I could take with me. The house felt cold, empty, like a shell of the life we had built together. I didn't say goodbye when I left. I couldn't. What was there left to say? We both knew it was over. As I drove away, the weight of it all hit me. The life I thought I had, the future I thought we were building, it was gone. And in its place was a hollow space, a blank slate I wasn't ready for yet. The road ahead felt uncertain, but at least I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't live in the lie anymore. I had chosen to walk away, and while part of me ached for what could have been, I knew it was the only way forward. The trust was gone, and without that, there was no foundation to rebuild. In the weeks that followed, I tried to settle into my new routine. I stayed in a small apartment, figuring out how to live on my own again. The silence was hard at first, but it became easier with time. There were moments when I thought about calling her, Moments when the memories of us together made me question if I had made the right choice. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, and I knew I had done what I had to. I hadn't seen Lauren since that day, and I didn't plan to. The chapter was closed, and now it was time to write the next one.